So we're going to work with our lovely Mr. Z, and I do have a helper today. Ready, Zeus? Come. So my son, Oren, is here. He's 8 years old. He's going to help work a little bit with Mr. Z. My littlest one is also here like she normally is on her Tuesdays and Thursdays, but she's busy having some snacks and doing her own thing. So when he gets a little bit mouthy, Oren, go right into just a couple find its. So a lot of times, puppies and littles sometimes struggle because they sometimes tend to be about the same size. Obviously, Mr. Z is going to be a nice big boy, but when we're dealing with that typical puppy mouthing, it doesn't feel good for adults, let alone small humans. So I would recommend to sometimes have your littles, if they're interested, practice a bit with some of the basics that we've been working on throughout the weeks. So some of my favorites are the find it behaviors because it can get Mr. Z up and wiggling. Ready, find it. So this way the attention is taken off of the little one or off of you and onto the ground. There you go, nice job. So the benefit for Mr. Z as well, learning that littles can also be part of training, is then he can look to the littles for assistance or look at them as somebody else that can also offer a behavior other than maybe thinking they only equal excitement or mouthy behavior. So right here, feed him for this, Oren, right between his little feet is fine. So what we're also practicing is helping Mr. Z generalize the skills he's been working on with adults and then potentially also pair it with some small humans. So a lot of times puppies just in general have a hard time generalizing skills from different environments, different distances, distraction levels, but also your generalization also has to take place with multiple different people if they're going to be potentially helpers in the training sessions. So a lot of times folks will always tell me like, oh, the dog listens better to my husband or he listens better to me versus my spouse. So a lot of times it's not because the dog is trying to be a jerk or not listen or not pay attention or be stubborn. They are more than likely confused, unsure that they can actually perform the similar behaviors with many different folks. And if you think about it from the puppy's perspective, remember if they really understood, let's say, for example, a sit, your puppy would be able to offer a sit in many different environments with many different distraction levels, with different surfaces, different rates of, distances between him and yourselves. But if your puppy can only really rock, ready? As you see, if your puppy could only really rock a sit in a calm, collective, and softer environment with you right in front of them, then that means they haven't really mastered sit the way they would had it been more of an advanced skill for down the road. So remember that your basic skills are still the same as your advanced skills, just refined and really, really well mastered, where they are very reliable and happen very easily. So remember that a lot of times mastering the basics means that you're then starting to get into your higher levels as well. So with Mr. Z, maybe we could work on a little bit too, is a little bit with some loose leash walking. So loose leash walking, even with a small human, if let's say Mr. Z starts to get excited as Oren starts to move, some of my favorites is of course to create some distance with the find its. So, but Oren, what you're gonna do for practice is I'll show you a little bit. So once Mr. Z finds all his crumbs, you can pick the left or the right, or if he goes on one side or the other, it doesn't really matter. So what we'd wanna show Mr. Z is show him that you got a little something. Ready, Zeusy? And I'm gonna try it first. He's like, no, he's reaching for his pouch. Ready, Zeus? Nice, good check-in. So if, for example, your puppy gets easily distracted, again, this is a great way to work through some of that distraction. And when he's meandering anywhere near you, Oren, notice how I'm feeding him when he's by my side. So what we're going to try to do is help him start walking with you. So go ahead and feed him for being nearby. If your littles do not like the slime factor, let's say they're about to feed the puppy, they can actually go ahead and just drop the snack right on the floor. So that way the puppy doesn't actually have to slime them. But you don't mind feeding him like a little goat. So beautiful. So you go ahead and wander around. I'm just going to be a little bit out of the way. So if Mr. Z gets a little bit in front of you, just try to walk a little bit. There we go. Right there. Feed him for that. Nice. And then meander again. There we go. Yeah, you can say his name. If he's getting a little excited, what I'd recommend, Oren, there you go. Nice. Feed him when all four are on the floor. You'll see that Oren is also doing flat palm. So flat palm feeding is really helpful in the beginning. So if your puppy is really overexcited or overwhelmed, and you can feed him for being soft on the ground. So you'll see we're also capturing really nice behavior that he's giving to us, either to him or to myself, because I want Mr. Z to start thinking that any good little attempt in the direction that we were hoping to kind of refine some of these lovely skills equals that you're going to get a paycheck for at least your good efforts. So for Mr. Z, just like with most puppies, they tend to not always know where your fingers and your treats start or end. So if you're holding fingers with your treat right in the middle, they tend to sometimes nibble your fingers at the same time. So I typically recommend in the beginning is put it in your hand, and you can also cover it with your thumb, and now it's still in a flat palm, but you can move your thumb out of the way, and now it's just your palm with your snack inside. So sometimes that can be very helpful, because for little humans and for dogs, and Oren, if he's going behind your back to find the snack, you can just hold it to your chest or reach for it when you're ready. So if, let's say, he gets a little too excited about the food, there we go, nice job. You can also feed him when you're ready, when he's by your side. So you could go again, Zeusy, get his attention, and then, well, hold on, I'm going to show you, and then feed him, and then you could go ahead and do the same thing. So if he's going for the food, he says, I would like to do it down for you. Nice. And then if he gets a little bit excited, feed for when he's on the ground again. So sometimes too, if you're attempting to do a certain skill with, let's say, your partner or your spouse or a family member or a little human, you could go ahead and do some little versions of what you've been working. But remember, your puppy's not going to perform the skill the same way he does with, let's say, me, like he's going to do it with Oren. So a lot of times your puppy has to remaster or rework the skills from the starting point with that new person the way they started with you in the beginning as well. So see if you can do a couple little puppy push-ups. So this is where you're going to feed him. He's like, how about a down? So if he does a down, feed him one little snack for the down, because otherwise you're going to go through all your snacks really fast. So find its is where you might throw a few. So now for a stand position or an up, well, that'll be more of a sit. So stand is where, do you mind if I show you, is you're going to pull him straight forward towards you. So he stands up. So there we go. Nice. Get it to happen. Wait it out. Feed for that. Nice. Then you could go into that down. If he wiggles too far forward though, Oren, try to bring it straight in front of him, not forward, away from you. So what a lot of folks do by accident with the down position, especially in the beginning when the puppy's learning, and us too, is we tend to show them the food, lower it, but then pull it towards us, and then the puppy walks out of a sit or walks out of their down. He says he's very hungry. He says, where are my snacks? There you go. One at a time. He's getting so many. Though most of it is like some of his kibble and a few other little crunchies, so nothing too exciting. So for puppy push-ups, I tend to, in the beginning, use the food to lure the puppy into a standing position. So give him a second, because right now I want to work him. And every time he kind of sees you jumping into your pouch, he thinks you're about to work with him too. So we're going to go ahead and get his attention into that stand. Remember how we've mentioned in class, feeding out the lure? I know that right now we're still technically using the lure to create the behavior. That was a lovely down. You can feed him for that. There are times where obviously we're capturing really nice skills. So again, the capture is like capturing a photograph or a moment in time and feeding for that. The other option would be, again, luring, which we want to fade out the lure as quickly as we can. And then there's also, for example, shaping. So ready, Zeusy? If, let's say, he is ever getting a little bit too excited with the small human, I like to always help create distance and a little breather with movement. So that way it's not me forcing the puppy into a sit and be stationary as the environment or the situation is getting a little too exciting or stimulating or overwhelming. So we might work again, get his little focus back on me. Nice job. I like his new little sweater. The bluish gray looks very nice on him. So go ahead and feed him for that. That was really pretty. Gorgeous. So remember, practice with littles does not have to be the most, again, pristine thing you've ever seen. The main goal is that you're feeding for softness, for comfortable from both ends. We want to make sure that puppies don't view the little human as always a playmate. So Oren, sometimes when you get low like that and you start patting, so this is a great example, is we want to share affection by touching the puppy. But remember that for a lot of dogs, us reaching and using our hands equals a wrestle moment. So for a lot of puppies, they think you're using your feet like a paw and they think that you're about to wrestle. So sometimes what I like to do is if you're going to be practicing some handling is I like to feed a little snack and then do a little touch and then feed for that as well. If the touch, though, gets your puppy excited, so notice how he starts to get a little bit jumpy, this could also be him saying, you know what, I'm a little bit flustered and now I'm starting to get a little overtired. So remember, if that mouth starts to get a little bit jazzed, it's typically that he's getting a little bit tired and a little overwhelmed. So, and sometimes, just like with us, we don't always want to be touched or given a hug or, patted. So there will be many a times where your puppies may not always view touching as sort of something they'd be interested in. So you do want to make sure that the consent is coming from both ends. This doesn't mean I don't want your puppy to get comfortable with the weirdness that is people, and people do touch and handle your puppy. But you want to make sure that we're definitely taking a peek-see over some of the cooperative care information, because it does transfer. So if he's having a scary event at the groomer, or is he having a scary event at the vet's office, then the problem there is then he might start to associate new people with the bringer of the bad or the uncomfortable feeling or the pain. So make sure that as he's practicing, Zeus, come, that he's getting a chance to make sure that the setups are successful and not always stressful from his perspective too. So we'll give Mr. Z a little breather from this one, and then maybe what we'll do is we'll work a little bit with some recall in just a moment. Yeah. Okay? Very nice job, guys.